All right. I always enjoy jumping off with this one sometimes as you look at just the daily habits, the things that you're doing, the things that you're teaching in your book for folks to do in the past. Let's say it doesn't have to be the past year, but the past, recent time frame. What's a new habit, something that's changed, maybe one that you've added in, maybe one that you quit doing or one that you altered?
It's so funny when people ask me like, what do you do? I'm like, I don't know, not much. So not true.
So not true. I'm sure,
Not
obviously you wouldn't be where you are.
so not true. I'm always tweaking and polishing. And like in the last year, I increased my water, right? Which seems simple, like a simple thing, but it actually can really create profound results in your health and your energy. A lot of times people have a lot of health issues just because they're not drinking enough water. I also then took it up a notch to like alkaline water, and not just always alkaline water, but alkaline and electrolyte water. Like, so I went down the
Yeah.
rabbit hole of water. Another thing that I got really into was this whole concept called earthing or grounding, and
Yep.
that to be out in nature more and making sure I'm getting enough vitamin D on my skin from the sun, and even having a grounding mat, which is a whole thing, and that I read about from Sleep Smarter, which is Sean Stevenson's book,
Yeah.
which really was like, oh, okay, that's really interesting. I remember it was really profound for me when I learned that about sleep. I used to kind of be like, oh, just work, work, burn the candle at both ends, and not realizing like the real necessity for sleep and enough sleep. Another thing that is a big one for me is actually like I realized, because I work with a functional doctor, so I get really specific testing done of my blood work for health reasons, and also just like to optimize my energy. And realizing like I was low on protein, so like upping enough protein so that I was getting enough protein per day. And so I follow a nutritionist that I like, that I'm like, okay, this is how I can make that fun, right? Like we
Yeah.
talked about, like, how do I make it fun? Okay, what kind of recipes can I learn? How can I make learning recipes fun? How can I make it not overwhelming that I always have to learn new recipes, versus like, how do I do like learn one new fun recipe per week, or every time I go to the grocery store, pick up a vegetable I don't know what it is and learn how to make something with it. Or how can I have my husband help sous chef while I make something and batch cook, so I have enough food in the fridge to free, like how do I just make it more fun? How do I play something that's interesting while I'm cooking? How do I, kind of like the mundane things, like, okay, you have to do laundry or clean the house, or like a lot of times I'll listen to a TED talk while I'm straightening up and putting my laundry away. Like, how do I make it more interesting for myself?
Well, which we talked about in the first show together, just in goals in general. We do, I think you said the ones, if they're not fun, we tend to not do them. So even this in the day-to-day habits, I appreciate that. So let me ask, like specifically,
Yeah.
you mentioned some in the health and wellness arena. So I usually ask people about, kind of the diet and exercise regimes, but I like it in regards to you because you are paid to look certain ways. You may be paid to look overweight in one role and not in another. So you're having to, it's a much more acute crucible for you in regards to your health. Cause it's not just, it is how you look to a degree, but as you know, your skin's going to look in regards to what you're putting into your body. So it's not just something that only your makeup artist can do.
No, definitely not. And definitely not. You definitely have to be aware of like, what does it cause? And I've had cystic acne, so I have to be very careful what I know, and I had to figure out like, what is that? Is it a hormone issue? Is it, from medication? Is it from all these things, like, stress, or chocolate, or,
So share on that one. That somebody's going to hear this and goes, yeah, I deal with that. So what did you find? What did you come to?
Well, I think
For
it's
you?
different for everybody because
Okay.
everybody's bodies are different,
Sure.
right? So I had actually found that through some hormones, through some medication, it actually messed with my hormones. So I
Oh,
had to go off that medication, and I had to do a lot of different, and that was a whole process of like getting that out of my system. And then also like cleaning out my liver because I'd had so many medications that I'd had.
hmm.
But that was a different philosophy. So if I went to a dermatologist or an esthetician, they weren't telling me to do that. But if I went to a nutritionist or functional doctor, they're like, oh, we gotta like clean out certain organs. A lot of your gut microbiome. If your gut microbiome's off, you can have anxiety, depression,
Yeah.
skin issues, also a whole host of issues, right? But
Yeah.
and that can be wrecked from just taking antibiotics and not like, what is it, giving the right bacteria to your gut.
Well, it's interesting. You're talking about the microbiome and you're talking about functional medicine. You don't even know this, but my listeners do. So in my other podcast, it's called the True Life Podcast. My co-host there is Dr. Randy James. He's a medical doctor and a functional medicine doctor. So we just did a show. I don't even know if it's come out yet, on the gut and on microbiome. So what you're speaking to is huge. They can go get a resource on that. So specifically though, when we look at so tell me literally nutritionally, do you have any specific thing in this day and age? Everybody wants the latest thing. Are you keto or you paleo, or what do you ascribe to?
Well, so I've done all the things, right? Aside from being like a liquidarian, right? We have liquids. I've done basically everything over, what I do now, because I work with a functional doctors, I know my blood work. So I know what I have food sensitivities to, what I'm allergic to. And your food sensitivities can cause, again, issues with your microbiome and your gut. So there may be certain things that because you're eating too much of it, right now you have a sensitivity for it, you got to be out for a while. So it's more specific than an anti-inflammation diet, which is basically like, let's get rid of anything that could that's the normal things that would inflame you, and go off it for a while, and then see what you're allergic to or have more issues to. This is more specific because it's dealing with your blood work. So I can see that, like, okay, this, and this is not working for my body right now. Or, for right now, dairy's not my friend. I'm not allergic to it, but it does cause inflammation in my body. Okay, good to know. Or if I have gluten, I notice, oh, wow, I'm tired later. So I then have a lot of different recipes and cookbooks from people who teach how to make really great recipes for people that suffer from autoimmune issues. My mom and my mom's side of the family massively go autoimmune. So I know that's within my genetics. It doesn't necessarily mean I have an autoimmune disease, but as epigenetics would say, I can trigger it if I don't do the right things. So I pay attention to that. I'm big into, I'm an athlete. I have to make it fun, right? If it's about losing weight and being skinny, that makes me angry. So I don't want to do that. So whether that's doing, like, I'm going to do a half marathon, I'm going to run a marathon, I'm going to have a running buddy, I'm going to do, I go through different phases. So it's not always the same thing.
What are your go-to exercise routines?
I've had lots over the years, whether it's been Pilates or yoga, or I've done like a Barry's boot camp. But right now I'm working out with a girlfriend of mine who's a trainer who I've known since I was like 19. And she's really big into the fitness world, and she does a lot of heavier weights. And I've learned that heavier weights are actually better for women as they get older, because of just bone density, and you just have longer results. And then also running, but a lot of interval running, and how it's done very scientific, and it's been fun. And then prior to that, I was doing a lot of Body by Simone, which is like a dance cardio, lower weight, higher rep. And I was like, that was really fun. But then I started to get burned out on it over the pandemic, So like I kind of like, okay, I'm ready to do something different, but it has to be fun. Otherwise I won't do it. If I don't enjoy it, I just won't do it. And also, one of the things when I've coached with people is like, they're like, I want to lose weight, I'm going to work out 2 to 3 times a week. I'm like, it's not enough. I love you. Not enough. Like, if you really want to lose weight, you have to, like, it has to be a lot higher. You have to work out a lot more than what you would like to. What you're doing is maintaining. And so they're like, oh no. I'm like, I know it sucks.
Well, I appreciate you labeling yourself as an athlete. We did a show on that, on why not? Why would we not all want to say, hey, I'm athletic. I don't care if it's badminton or racquetball or Pilates or whatever, but if it's something you do every day, there's an athletic ability or aspect to you. Why not claim that? Just like I want to say also, I'm a cook. I mean, I don't just do it once in a while. I'm a pretty good cook. I'm not a chef. It's not a professional thing, but you can be an athlete without being a paid professional.
Well, and I was an athlete, even though I was also an actress. I played soccer. I was on track. I did cross country. Like I've run a marathon. I've run half marathons. Like I've done that. So there is that athletic spirit, and even focus, and like with goal setting, it's like, I have an athletic, like, okay, this is the goal. This is how do we go after this? oh, we didn't win the championship. Okay, let's start again.
Yeah. You mentioned sleep. So that is one where I have been so grateful, whether it's in any high performing role,
Mhm.
whether it's as an actress, as a business person, whatever. That sleep used to be, as you said, it was that thing of, oh man, 4 hours, that's all I can afford
Yeah,
with my
yeah.
busy high profile schedule and whatnot. And we've seen that turn a lot. And if you're working with a functional doctor, of course, that's a big part of that. Where I'm always curious, literally, where do you average? What is your goal for quantity of sleep? And then how do you specific things you do for quality?
Well, again, I learned a lot of stuff from that Sean Stevenson's book, so I don't want to claim like it was my expertise. But I thought it was really interesting that the key times to sleep, to have optimal sleep, is around 10 p.m. to 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. So I was like, oh, you need to go to bed a lot earlier than you think to get the most rest for your body, and that's and also like keeping it cool enough in your house is a big thing for optimal sleep.
Yeah.
I use a weighted blanket just because there's things about that are supposed to be good for you. Magnesium is a great way to get better sleep before, to help your body. And I also I have essential oils that I use that, they're just things that I'm like, oh, I like this. And, am I religious about it? No. But if it feels good to me that day, I'm going to do it. Okay, great. But I don't have a rigidity around it. But I try to generally go to sleep around 10 and get up at 6. Sometimes I've gone through phases where I get up at 5, it depends on or with work, sometimes it's 4. It just kind of depends on
Yeah.
what my schedule is. I mean, it's different because I have a toddler. So I kind of have to
Yeah.
adapt to the reality of him. But I think that sleep is really good, but also things like certain self-care things like sauna. I'm a big into infrared sauna. Hot cold therapy, I think, is really important. I'm big into acupuncture. They're just different things that if I'm out of alignment, I'll get body work done. I'll get acupuncture done. I'll get Pilates. I'll do Pilates, or I'll get a massage. So I know if my body gets out of whack, especially because I've had a back injury, like if it gets too out of whack, I'm out. So I have to be diligent if it starts to get funky, because I
Yeah.
can't afford to be out for 2 weeks and walk around like I'm hobbling like an 80-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't. So I have to be careful about that because I'm prone to back injury since I injured my back when I was 19 and I was told I'd never run again. So and I healed 3 bulge discs.
Yeah.
So I think that you got to know your body and what you can and can't do, and then how to recover from it. And I think that's where people can get tricky. It can get tricky for some people.
Well, and again, we hit on recovery just overall, whether it's physically, mentally, whatnot, in the first show too. I did want to ask about relationships because you mentioned it. I saw it in your book, and it's acute to me because we had a show recently on, in essence, mastermind groups. We had Diane Pavlak. She was on the show. She wrote about the Inklings. So C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, and the power of that group and how they sewed into each other's work and lives and whatnot. And you talk about that in regards really even to digesting your book and, find some people to do this with, to bounce things off of, and wanted to ask how you have done that in your personal life with certain groups, social groups, friends, family, whatever, how that plays out.
Well, I definitely am now at a point where it's like the litmus test of you remember in chemistry, is this an acid or is this a base? And
Yeah.
if it's red or blue.
Yeah.
I definitely, if someone is not uplifting and inspiring to me, I don't spend time with them. Someone could be going through a hard time, of course, but for the most time, people that are within my inner circle, they're not indulging in it. Or they may be going through it, but they're still working to try and figure out how to do that, to work through the tragedy or whatever the thing is. Because I can't be I used to be everyone's lifeline,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I was like, that's not good for me. And also it's codependent. It's not a good, this is not helping further what I want, and it's holding me back, and it's a form of self-sabotage. So I think that that is a big thing. Who are your inner circle? Who are your marble jar friends, which I
Yeah.
grabbed from
That's where you talked about it.
yeah,
Right.
Breanna Brown's
Yeah.
Courage. And so anyway, the new Hollywood, I kind of have handpicked people that are wanting to work on their life and working through things, and they're artists, and we work through, my guidebook, and we're in a dialogue. So if someone says, I'm looking for a new functional doctor, a bunch of people will be able to chime in. Or if someone says, I'm struggling with self-doubt and limiting beliefs or aging or whatever the thing is, right? Someone can say, oh, try this or try that, or what about this, or this is what worked for me. And so there's a collaboration of saying, like, even though you may be struggling in this thing, there are tools out there. And that is a big thing that I hit on in my guidebook, which is, and this is a belief that I truly do have, which is, if something isn't working in my life right now, it means that there's something I don't know yet. It means there's something I don't know yet. It doesn't mean you'll never know it. It just means I don't know it yet. And if I go about it from that perspective, then I'm more open to learning. And then the other thing, which I said, which, is similar to you, which is like, if there's something that I'm working on, like, let me hear resources from a bunch of people that claim to be experts in that field. And I'll cherry pick what feels right to me. And then notice what really doesn't feel right to me and why, because that might be the key too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And I again saw that in your book. There's so many people that you resource. And I also appreciated you saying that you're somewhat sensitive to giving credit where credit is due. Yeah. Me too.
It's one of my biggest pet peeves. And when people like claim stuff as their own knowledge, and I'm like, that is Louise Hay.
Exactly.
Is so-and-so. Like, I know who that is sourced from. And then on top of which, because I know so many people in the field, I'm like, I know you're not living that.
Well, gosh, that is a hard one there of, I've been called a hypocrite more than once, admittedly. But yeah, with that, there's a best-selling book right now that it's gold. I love it. I wish the author had resourced more people, because he said some things like, dude, I know who that is. I wish you'd just put some credit in there. Again, I think it adds to our own credibility. And as Solomon said so long ago, there's nothing new under the sun. So I'm not trying to pretend like I've created something absolutely new.
Well, and also one of the things that I wrote in there is, I believe in hearing things in stereo. So like, if I say, this is my experience, this is what I've had, here's why I believe XYZ. And then you say, okay, great, but that might not totally resonate with you, or you're not ready to hear it yet. But if I say, source this person, this person, this person, and this person, you're going to hear it in a slightly different way. Or I've had people where they're like, they hated the intonation or the vibe of some person, but love someone else, but they're saying the exact same thing.
Totally.
And I'm like,
totally. Yeah,
that is the exact same thing. So that's why I try to like reference things in stereo. I'm like, here's my experience. This is what I went through. This is what I believe. But for you, check out XYZ.
Yeah.
And then see what feels right to you. Because
I want folks to hear that, because that is the opportunity for all of us who have a desire to influence others. Is you don't have to have something that is brand new, but it's your flavor, your take, and even just your personality, because somebody is going to want to hear their personal development or whatever from the, Ferrari $1,000 or, $5,000 suit type person. Well, that's not me, obviously. And some people don't at all. And they want the mountain athletic dude. And that's fine. That there is a place for each of us with our voice. You talked about, you just barely alluded to it, I think, in our first show together, of, I'm going to call it your morning routine, but I think you mentioned something about getting up and the things that you do. That is one that I'm so grateful. It is a more common topic than ever right now. And we've got some great people like Hal Elrod and Robin Sharma who talk about the 5 a.m. club and the miracle morning and the morning routine. So you spoke about it. I want to know what yours is.
Well, it's so funny. One of the women I was coaching she's like, I'm doing the 5 a.m., club. And I was like, great. And then after about a couple months, she's like, I hate it. I'm like, then let's adapt.
Thank you. Go there, because I've hit on that so often. The point is to have these things done. Maybe 5 a.m. is technically the best one, but if you do any of those things at any time during the day, you're like in the 1% club.
Yeah. And I'm like, and it doesn't need to be perfect. Progress is not perfection. So if we're going for perfection, we're always going to fail, because there's always a standard that's beyond our ability. Right. But if we're going for progress, that we can always win at. So I've had a period of time where I woke up at 5 a.m. and then my circumstances changed and now I don't. And that's
Yep.
okay. And that is okay. That was in that phase of that part of my life. And I may go back to it or may not. And, I think also some people's ability to do certain things shifts as they have kids and kids of different ages. Like
Yeah.
my morning routine shifted dramatically when I had a baby.
Oh my gosh.
It just had to. So then how do I adjust it, or how do I make it a mini meditation? Because I can't do the exact amount of meditation. Like, how do I adapt it, or adapt to my kids waking me up early? Okay, so I can't do the thing, or my spouse has to go to work. So now I can't get my meditation in. It's like, okay, well then what can you do? Well, I can do 3 deep breaths, and I can say something I'm grateful for as I'm doing the dishes. And I can try and be really present with my kid and put my phone down. So I'm not starting off my day on my phone. So I'm just starting off with like that and putting on music that's inspiring just to get me in a better headspace, because I didn't get my 15 minutes of, meditation to, do my thing. So to start off my day, AM routine is so important. And it's why I put in the guidebook, like even seasonally, like what are you doing within your AM? Because sometimes it changes. And see what works. Like, oh yeah, that thing I did in the fall really worked. Okay, let me go back to that. But so right now, I drink a lot of water when I first wake up. I probably like a big canister of water, but I'm not rigid about it. It's not like I have to get it done. It's just like, okay, that makes me feel good. I'm going to do that. I have a lot of like tinctures and herbs and things that I take first thing in the morning. I'm big onto I take a protein shake first thing in the morning. I have another one set up for later. And I'm doing that while I'm making my son's chocolate milk.
Oh, right. Thank you for the quote, the air quotes, if you're not watching this. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
He's like, I want chocolate milk. I'm like, it's a chocolate protein shake with greens powder in it.
Beautiful.
But he loves it. I'm like, great. I will first thing, if I have time to meditate, if it's not whatever the circumstances that I mentioned, because I have a 3.5-year-old and sometimes it can be unpredictable, I do meditate. I really love Emily Fletcher's Ziva meditation. I think she's really hit the nail on the head with how she goes about explaining it, the science behind it, keeping it simple. And within that, there's also a gratitude portion, and then a visualization portion, which I really love. I'm also a big believer in prayer. So I then will often pray, after my meditation and go off in my day. And when I get to do that, I'm like humming, in the mornings, I also, like I said, I'll try and put on music that feels good for the house, or essential oils to feel, like in a diffuser, but again, it depends on the time. If I have time, if I don't have the time, I adapt. And so I'm big on like there has to be fluidity within the rigidity. Because if it has to be perfect in order to, then you're always going to be frustrated, because there's always unknown circumstances.
My wife has said, she loves the 80-20 rule, and doing the 80-20 rule maybe 80% of the time. So it's even dietarily now, what she came up with, or that I attribute to her, was because we've gone through everything from vegan to different things, and she said we're flexitarians. Like, I'm good with that.
I like that. Dr. Mark Hyman says it's what is it called? It's a paleo and vegan. What is it?
Pagan. Yeah. 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 Like, I was trying to come up with it too.
It was pagan. He's like, I'm pagan. And he said it in jest, but also kind of not.
And now, no, I think it kind of, I don't know, it went viral, whatever, but now I think it's become a thing. Cause obviously I know it. So
vegan. That's what it was. That's what he coined in his, what the heck should I eat book.
You mentioned tinctures and whatnot. I was going to ask, because of your functional medicine connection, if there are any, because we talk about on my True Life podcast, we talk about literally, different nutritional supplements and things. Are there some that are kind of your mainstays?
They are, but they're all through the Beehive of Healing, which is Dr. Habib Siddiqui, and he has interesting labels for all of his concoctions. There's a lot of herbs and whatnot based on just my blood work. Right. But Parsley Health is a great place to go. Yeah. If people, looking up any of the, as you're well versed in the functional medicine with your other podcasts, but I literally was interviewed by Los Angeles Times about holistic medicine, just because healed my back with holistic medicine. I've
Yeah.
deal with skin things. I did with postnatal depletion, which is a whole thing. If you're a
Yeah.
woman and you are feeling low energy, like there's this great book by a functional doctor called Postnatal Depletion,
Hmm.
not depression, depletion. And it talks about all the things that can happen when women don't replenish themselves after having a baby, and often can result in chronic illness. So that's super fascinating to learn about. And it can even happen up to 10 years postpartum. So that was really interesting. And then, like I said, my back injury.
Yeah.
So I've been really big in like dealing with all of those things along the way and finding holistic ways versus not negating all Western medicine, but I've often found that Western medicine has caused more problems down the line for me with just with residuals of
Yeah.
medication.
You speak in your personal story directly to and allude some to just your own spiritual journey within that. So is that a part of whether it's the daily, weekly habits that you invest in that area of your life?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, every year I look at I do the excavation through my guidebook to see what is it I need to deal with. Like last year, I realized like, oh, I need to do some forgiveness work, and I need to speak up, and I need to set some boundaries with some people. And with that, there were certain people that I realized I needed to have a silent divorce from, certain people I needed to have a real conversation with, and certain people I needed to just say this relationship's no longer serving me. So, like doing that kind of work, I think is really important. And for me, the spiritual work for me right now, it's a lot of forgiveness work, right? And
Mhm.
forgiveness of like looking at certain things and saying, what can I forgive a lot of it, forgive myself, right? And that's a thing that I really learned, is that often we get so mad at other people for certain things, but what we're often really mad about is that we allowed those things to happen in the first place, right? So how do we forgive ourselves? How do we forgive ourselves for not taking better care of ourselves? Or how do we forgive ourselves for not like listening to our intuition, or
Mhm.
for staying so long, or not speaking up, or whatever the thing was? So that, there's a prayer of forgiveness that I'm, right now I'm habitualizing each day to like, kind of like get to do that and think about that releasing. And I do that after my meditation, or at night after I do some journaling. But the other big way that I do with spirituality is noticing my kismet moments. So I write them down, like when I notice coincidences, because I do believe that those are like whispers. It's like the Celestine prophecy, like they're whispers of the divine saying, like, turn right, go here, like say this thing, be of value right now. Or, there was a thing where I was having an issue with boundaries, and I was being driven in New Orleans for a job, and I was like perseverating on this person I needed to have this conversation with, and they weren't respecting my boundaries, and I hadn't really fully spoken up about them. And but I was having this whole inner monologue. And as I was being driven to my hotel, there was a ginormous billboard that said boundaries.
Interesting.
And I was like, oh well, there. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yep, I
Thanks
got to
for the
work on
sign,
boundaries.
God. Yeah.
Thank you, got it. And like wrote it down. Just like, okay, yep, I really got to I got to address it. It's time.
You mentioned boundaries so many times, so I'm going to make a call out to Nedra Glover Tawwab. She has a book called Set Boundaries, Find Peace. And I had her on a show. Gosh, this is 2022. It was sometime last year, 2021, but I have gone back into that at
Yeah,
the guidance of my counselor, who says that's one of my biggest problem areas is not setting boundaries. So it's one that I continue to grapple with. It's stupidly hard for me to do.
yeah,
And yet I have, I've learned it the hard way of not doing that. And so so with that said, that I really struggle. For those of you who haven't listened to that show, you might check that one out, because it would be a good show on boundaries from somebody who has none historically and is trying to. But thanks for pointing that one out, because yeah, it's one that I see us continually, I think, in that as again, I'm going to say this as an aspiring person who really has a heart for trying to influence other people for the better and to serve them. That is not very conducive to boundaries. Generally.
yeah. Well, and it's like, how do you then not let their circumstances and their lessons, right? Whatever the patterns they're working through at that point, so that you're not absorbing it. And if you're empathic, right? Like if you're a very sensitive, highly sensitive person, then I recommend Dr. Orloff's books, and she's a psychiatrist. She's an intuitive psychiatrist who talks specifically with empaths. And it's Empath Survival Guide, and she has another one as well. The Empath Survival Guide. And there's lots of great just energetics for people who are very sensitive, highly sensitive people, or people who are empathic or intuitive. But boundaries, if you're not careful with boundaries, it can be because you're codependent. Yeah. Right. It's like, or you feel your sense of self comes from helping other people, but to your own detriment, and then you're resentful. Yeah. So,
have you been talking to my therapist? Actually,
it's weird. She just texted. No.
Yeah. Thanks.
No, but, and that's a real thing. That was a real thing for me too, is like honoring, like I would feel what other people were going through, and I would put what they needed over what I needed. And so it took a while. And what I realized is I was betraying myself. Yeah. Because I was like, I'm now depleted in order to support you, but this isn't reciprocal, or you're not capable. And so I have to set really strong boundaries because this is draining me. Yeah. And I can't then do my purpose because I'm trying to caretake for you. And what I also realized is that by not setting boundaries, what I was doing was enabling other people. Yeah. I was enabling them to stay small, because I wasn't letting them hit their rock bottom.
It's so interesting you pull that out, because I've been fed some of this by my counselor. And yet it's not because I'm an empath. I am not sensitive to others' feelings, but I take responsibility for their outcomes to an unhealthy degree, and to a point where, I don't have boundaries and I'm hurting myself by trying to help them. And a lot of it's to feed my self-image, my own ego, which is associated with, I have to be Superman. So I'm not empathic. That's my wife does, I think, a similar thing as an empath. I do it over here, trying to be Superman with a God complex. And either way, we're hurting ourselves by trying to help others, which I'm often doing, still trying to feed my own baggage. So it's a big ball of wax there.
But I also think that people, like one of the things I wrote in there, I'm only ready for something when I'm ready for it.
Oh, I saw you write that in your book. Yeah, like, it's in your book.
It's like I know that there's been things that I have gotten the right advice a decade ago. I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah.
Or that book, I'm not ready for that book. Or like, and then years later I look at it and I'm like, now it all makes perfect sense. But I wasn't ready to receive that information then. So I think it's hard, because in the development thing, you're like, I know the fast track. I know what would help you the fastest. And then you see the other person hit up on and skirt around, or sort of do it and straddle something and say, and they're like, see, it doesn't work. You're like, no, dude, you're not doing it. You're not doing what I'm recommending, but it's only because they're not fully ready.
Yeah, that was daunting, Brianna.
So hard.
In writing my book and realizing how much knowledge I have from these people that I've had on the show. And I've got such a wealth of knowledge, and I've got it in this package that the, publishers thinks it's going to be great. And then I'm writing about it and realize I'm kind of impressed with how much I know, and then depressed with how much of it I have not done. And not, obviously I heard it, it's stuck there, not ready for it. And here I am back now looking at boundaries again. When I had Henry Cloud on the show 6 years ago, apparently I wasn't ready for it then. So yeah, thank goodness for the timeline. All right. So here's one in the first show we did together. I pulled out kind of your methodology of, sprint, recover, play, and rediscover. And we talked about that in the first show. On the play aspect, though, I told you don't give too much away, because I want to know about it here now. I always land on this one. It's just interesting to me. I find that the people who are, I'm not going to even say the most, well, I will say successful, but I'm going to say success in a deep, fulfilling sense of the way. They haven't just achieved, stardom, but they're actually happy, fulfilled people, have play. They do that. They make it a priority. It's not just a luxury. So to take that in there, I want to ask some of the things that you do that are just for fun, play. I mean, you said self-care, but the things we talked about it recently, and it was the not inherently productive things possibly. Now we know it is productive for us, but the things that you do for fun, for play, that are just for Brianna.
There's a lot of things, like whether it's like quality time, like quality alone time, whether that's, like I said, there's certain self-care things like you doing a sauna, or, even if it's something like taking a nap, taking a bath, taking an Epsom salt bath, taking, um, going on a hike by myself. I mean, I've gone on several day just retreats by myself up north, where I'm like, I got to get out of here. I need a few days away. Like, I'm just
Mhm.
going away. I just need to rest and sleep in and just do me, and not have to be caretaking for anybody else.
Yeah.
um you know and obviously that can be more of a luxury, but I think, like, even with partnership, like, how do you make it fun? Whether it's as simple as, like, every night saying what you're grateful for each other, and, like, really being, in that, so you're building on that. Whether it's having little vacations together, so it doesn't have to, whether it's a staycation, but just so you're having time. The simplicity of, like, a weekly date night, and that's hard in a pandemic, but still, like, now
Yeah.
it's everything's more opened up. But, like, how to do that? And I got to be really creative when, especially because California was so locked down. Like, all right, we're going for a drive, we're getting some sushi, and we're gonna go on a drive, we're gonna go look at a view, we're gonna eat sushi on and we made it really fun. Like, how do we make it fun, especially when everything was locked up here,
Yeah.
or locked down here? But so how to make all of those things fun for yourself, and fun for your partner, or fun for your family. Something simple like meal prep. Like, I was super resistant to meal prep. I was like, that's so annoying to me. I don't want to have to be that rigid. I don't like the idea of that. And then I suddenly realized, like, well, then it come 5 o'clock, I'm like, well, what are we having for dinner? And now I'm having to expend all this energy trying to figure out, oh, I'm missing this ingredient. And so I realized it was a waste of my energy. Like, I wasn't being effective with my time and my energy.
Yeah.
And so I realized, if I just take a little bit of time during the day when I'm not exhausted at night, and I plan out what I'm gonna have, and I have all my groceries ready, and I cook enough that I can batch cook and freeze half of whatever I'm making. And then I can delegate out, like, a little bit of, if I need to do certain, like, sous chef stuff, whether that's, like, my husband, or if I have childcare to help at the time my kid's napping, or whatever the thing is, right? Or I can do it earlier. But one of the things I did is I got a big wooden board, so I can put what I'm having for the meals for the week, to kind of make
Really?
it fun. And then I got myself, my husband, and my kid all really pretty aprons. And so they're hanging up. So it kind of became like a thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're gonna all make this thing together, or I'm gonna make it, or let's put on our aprons. So when my son wants to have, cookies, and again, air quotes, they're like made of almond flour, and
Mhm.
and,
Yep.
not that he doesn't eat normal food occasionally, but, like, for the most part, it's a very adapted, healthy version of it. We're putting on his apron, and we're making it together, and,
Yeah.
and I'm making a thing of it. So suddenly now I'm making it an experience, or I'm making it, like, artistic. I started watching Chef's Table, which I love, and I think is such a great show, or Fat, Salt, Acid, Heat on Netflix. And it's just like, suddenly you're seeing it from a different viewpoint, where it's not a have to, it's a get to, it's a way of expression, it's a way of, like, being present, listening to fun music. And I'm like, oh, suddenly I'm making this thing that I can have a real resistance and anger about, and making it fun.
Yeah.
The other one that's fun with food is, if you have friends who are better at cooking than you, have a little dinner party, like, where you schedule, like, hey, will you teach me how to cook some food,
Yeah.
and we'll have a dinner party. And I did that one year. Every month I did a different dinner party with different friends that were good cooks. And I like would go around and to different friends, and they taught me how to cook. I basically had like 12 cooking lessons from
That's
friends.
excellent.
So it was fun,
So
right?
we can be apron pals. I'm an apron guy. My kids love it because if I've got an apron on, there's there's going to be good food. There's music. There's wine. I love the routine of it.
Yeah.
Even the ritual. My brother's kind of got me onto that topic. The ritual of that.
Mhm.
These fun, joyful rituals to bring into something that would otherwise be drudgery. So
Yeah.
I like your take on that. Even again in the first show, you talking about the things that are fun are the things that we continue to do, and if it's not, we generally don't. So this has
I
been fun.
I do think that, like, just lastly, like, I
Yeah,
do
yeah,
think it's like, if you look at every one of your goals or the habits in your life, and you say, okay, how could I go about doing this and making it more fun for myself, or more playful, or more joyful,
yeah,
or having more of a sense of humor around it? And then you go from that way on how you write your goal and how you execute what you're doing, everything changes.
yeah.
Everything changes.
That's a good tagline. And maybe that's the title of the show right there. I agree with, as we talked about before, I'm learning not to take myself so seriously and to have fun, make the things fun. So yeah, thank you for bringing that in. I appreciate it. Thanks for the behind the scenes and just for being with me again, Brianna.
Of course. Thank you.